Hi, it's Brian Kelleher with Keller Williams Realty. So your house is under contract and closing day is approaching. What are your responsibilities as a seller? Well, watch my video to find out. So your house is under contract and closing day is approaching, and we get questions all the time. As a seller, what are my responsibilities at closing? Well, for starters, always refer back to your contract. Everything should be detailed in the contract, and if you ever have any questions or something's not clear to you, then definitely clarify with your agent. Don't just assume you know the answer. So for starters, what are your responsibilities as far as personal property at the house? This should be detailed in the contract. In fact, there's a separate addendum we do pretty often that details what is supposed to stay with the house and what the seller is supposed to take with them. However, as a general rule of thumb, if something is attached to the house, it's supposed to stay with the house. Everything else needs to go, and that includes all of your miscellaneous stuff in the garage and the basement. So brooms and rakes and paint cans and lawn equipment, all that stuff should go with the seller. And if there's something that you feel might be useful to leave behind for the buyer, definitely clarify with your agent that the buyer is okay with that staying. Don't just assume that they're going to want it to stay. Number two is cleanliness. How clean does the house need to be when you move out? Well, as a general rule of thumb, again, if it's not detailed differently in the contract, it needs to be reasonably clean. And that means something different to everybody. So how I like to explain it is, if you were the buyer moving into the house, how would you want it to look? There's nothing more disappointing to a buyer than moving in and there's dust bunnies and melted popsicles in the refrigerator. You want the house to be clean and pleasant for the buyer to move into. So again, general rule of thumb, how would you want the house to look if you were moving into the house? And number three is, what condition does the house need to be in? Well, there's not a lot of gray area with this. A house needs to be in the same condition it was when the buyer did their inspection, and if any damage has arisen since then, it is the seller's responsibility to fix it. Again, if you have any questions about any of this stuff, always refer back to your contract and clarify with your agent. Don't just assume you know the answer, and you'll avoid a lot of confusion through the process. So I hope that's helpful information. If you have any questions about any of this, shoot me an email or a text. And in the meantime, thanks for tuning in and stay in touch.